Yeah. This is, the first video of my second channel, Bonzil Robotics. Or Bonzil28 Robotics, whatever you want to pronounce. And, yeah, here's all my robots. Again, it's not complete, because at this point, I never made Panic Attack, Smee, and two other robots, Flippy and Horizon, which will be coming out shortly. So, yeah, let's just go to the robots that I have made. And also for the upcoming 4, maybe soon, will also be featured. So yeah, let's begin. Starting off with Aristokill. This robot has a vertical spinning drum and piercing claws. I kind of got this name from Aristocrat. Some I think it's French for just fancy person from France, I believe. I don't know. So this robot has a spinning drum. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but I kind of tested it with Witch Doctor, and it does a pretty good control and damage. It's also quite fast, probably because I added new batteries to it. I don't know. Anyways, so this robot has a spinning drum, like I said, and it's also got piercing claws. It doesn't... The claws itself don't do anything, because it's just mainly there for pushing. And yeah, that's Aristokill. On to the next robot. Next up is Basilisk. Oh boy, where do I even start with this guy? Its drive is meh. It has a good and reliable flipper. And yeah, the only thing that's good about this robot is that it just has a good flipper. Biggest problems? I don't know if it could self-right. It has terrible control, just like its real-life counterpart. And I don't even know if it does anything. But if anything, in real life, it does have side panels. But if the original Bronco were out, including the other Hypershock, then it would have been much better. But no, I made this robot because it was easier instead of making either free shipping or double jeopardy. And boy, that was the biggest mistake. And as you can see there, I'm frustratingly trying to move this guy, so this guy's bland. Next robot is Battle Axe. This robot has an attacking axe and pretty decently powerful front. Its front is mainly for attacking horizontal spinners, and its backside it has 3 wedgelets, which are mainly more powerful than its front, and mainly more durable. It was going to have 4-pronged wedgelets, but that's for an upcoming robot, as it gave it 3 spikes on the back, and same with Greyhole, you'll see in a moment. As this robot's axe is not as powerful as some of the other robots, but it does a decent amount of damage. And I don't know if this guy can necessarily self-right like the other robots, as you saw there. And there itself is attacking Warhead. So, if I were to rate this guy, even though its design looks new, it's one of the oldest robots I made. Next up is Beta, another axe robot. Similar with Battle Axe, it keeps on repeating. Beta's hammer is like Battle Axe, but lesser reliable. And you may be thinking, did you paint those bolts on Beta's side panels? Answer, yes. Does its panel comes off very easily? Yes. Does it kind of self-right? Mostly. Is its back usually used as a wedge rather than its front? Absolutely. Beta's got all those traits, and sorry for that hand being in the way. I was trying to move the camera. As there you just see beating Blue Talon mercilessly. If I said that correctly, I don't know. And yeah, Beta also has a bit of some control problems, but nonetheless, it's a good robot. Next robot. And boy, this is a kick. Next up is Bite Force. Oh my god, I love this robot. Though it may have a bit of some control issues, and it does have 4-wheel drive, it's still got a good kicking spinner. Like in that instance, it knocked off Warhead's spinner, and it's pummeling a robot in that corner mercilessly. as that is CSX 36, a robot that will be featured in Robot Brick Season 3. Hopefully coming later next year, but I don't know. It depends whether I finish and just uppercutted him. Nice. Bite Force has some low to the ground wedgelets and has a good, decent control, but it is quite slow. Similar with Battle Axe. But nonetheless, it's got some good control and 4-wheel drive. Next up. Next up is Black Hole. This robot has a very chunky wedge. And I don't know. This robot itself is slightly bland. Just like with Basilisk, it's got some decent control. But at least it moves better than Basilisk. And though it does not do anything, though Basilisk has a flipper but it has terrible control, Black Hole has a wedge. Though it doesn't do any sort of damage or at least anything, it's pretty good at controlling other robots. For this instance, pushing around Warhead. Man, Warhead just keeps getting beaten up every single time. I feel bad for it. But anyways, this robot has pretty exposed wheels. Hopefully at some point I can make some side panels so that every robot will stop aiming for its back. And as you just saw there, Black Hole just lost its wheel. That's mainly its weakness. But it can drive inverted, so that's a good thing. Alright, next up. Next up is Blacksmith. Probably one of my favorite axe bots besides Battle Axe. This robot has a pretty strong hammer. And well, it's Blacksmith. Sorry for the hand in the way. Anyways, there you see it just beating up Warhead. Man, I seriously hate when every single robot just targets Warhead. I mean, does anyone like Warhead anymore? Anyways, back with Blacksmith. It originally had its wedge, but I lost it. So, in replace of that, I gave it Lego forks, and it looks pretty accurate. Especially to its Season 3 model, because that's what Blacksmith's model's supposed to be. Hashtag please bring back original Blacksmith model, because I don't like the hammer saw design. But anyways, I love this robot of Blacksmith, and just like with Black Hole, it has trouble driving. But at least it moves. Next, Flippy. Next up is Bronco. Probably one of my favorite flippers. Basilisk is, well, number 3 because he sucks. Thunderstrike is somewhere close. But Bronco, no one underestimates this robot. I mean, it just flips everyone, no problem. Yes, its wedgelets may come off a bit easily, like that for instance. But all this robot enjoys is just freaking flipping. I mean, that's just what this robot loves to do. Yeah, I literally had 4 Bronco chassis. One just broke. One of them I turned to Thunderstrike. That one I kept. And one I found on eBay that I turned to Basilisk. So yeah, 4... Sorry for the arm hand again. 4 Bronco models, and almost all of them broke. Or had flipper issues. But anyways, I love this robot. Next up is Brutus. Probably one of my favorite robot, or probably one of the most difficult challenges of a robot I have ever made. Well, step 1 was to take out the entire robot, just so I could paint its front, spinner, and the tires, which was a pretty difficult task. And 100% was a nightmare to put back together. But anyways, this robot originally had front wedgelets at the front, but I took them off because it was hindering its drive, which was, 1, a major problem, and 2, because its front wheels were being supported up by its back wheels, which are bigger than the front wheels, because I tried basing it off of Season 2's Brutus, and because this robot had 4 wheels instead of 2. But anyways, I love this robot. It was a nightmare to make. But anyways, off to my favorite robot. Next up is Cyclone, a creation of Chaotic Robotics. Chaotic Robotics, if you are watching this video, I'm not making this design. I'm not ripping this design off you. Or am I making it look bad? Anyways, Cyclone has a pretty powerful spinner. And I think, to be honest, it's probably the most powerful spinner in my entire collection. One time when I test battled it with beta a couple of months ago, it literally shut beta off. Either that or it had weak batteries. But anyways, the reason during the test footage I spun up the Cyclone Spinner at the start was because it took so long for the spinner to spin up that I don't even know how. But anyways, this robot is pretty awesome. And thanks Chaotic Robotics for bringing me this inspiration. And there it is doing its signature spin. Next up, a robot you probably forgot about. Next up is Death Roll. Another robot with a fairly powerful spinner. Man, everyone just keeps targeting Warhead. Anyways, man, Death Roll Spinner is just so devastating. Yes, a lot of people will say they should have made it out of like Witch Doctor or another robot, but I chose Force's chassis because it had a lot more stronger drive and a more better spinner, and also the fact that I don't have a 3D printer. But I could have made it out of the 2015 design of Witch Doctor, but I didn't feel like it, and also I didn't have one at the time. As same with Battle Axe, this was probably if not the most oldest robot I have had. Same with Witch Doctor, but I converted it into a robot not shown, Destroya, which I will not show. Hopefully it will turn. Next up is Duck. One of my favorite robots, and not really the best, but lifter. As it doesn't necessarily lift as good, better than Basilisk, Thunderstrike, and Bronco, but it has a good enough lifting. Like they're lifting Warhead for some positive reason. And I don't know, Duck just has some good pushing power. It rarely does anything, but in one test fight with Minotaur, it literally flipped it on its back. Though it may not do as much good as like the other lifters and flippers, it still does a pretty good amount of lifting, even for a robot that's sadly retired. Rest in peace is Duck. Yeah, I just love Duck. Just look at him, he's so cute. But no one will outmatch Rusty. Next up is Extinguisher. It's supposed to be an axe robot, but the weapon motor broke, and thus meaning I couldn't make its spinner design or the axe itself move. Ugh. And also, I kind of muted this because, I don't know why. Anyways, yeah. When a robot is supposed to drive up the robot's front, the axe is supposed to come down, but because all because of my Lego robots don't really move, it can't actually make the axe fire. Though it may look its wedge is not really durable, it kind of is, but well, it's good against vertical spinners, but not against horizontal spinners. Because in one fight with Cyclone just broke. Next up is Fabulous Jeff, or 2 Jeff 2 Fabulous, known by David Smeg. Oh my god. This robot is so destructive that it literally broke everything. It kind of broke the arena, it destroyed Nico. There you see Nico just being absolutely wrecked by Fabulous Jeff. And again, this is an inspiration from David Smeg's Fabulous Jeff. But just because it's very destructive means it has a bit of some weaknesses. So for one, the wheels are exposed. I don't know if they could kind of self-right. Sort of. And also, during this test footage, I tried finding that one piece that goes on the Warhead's arm, and it literally just disappeared out of nowhere. Man, Fabulous Jeff is destructive. And that's why I love this robot, and I made it for Pride Month. Next up is Ghost Raptor. Yeah, it's not supposed to have tracks, but again, I tried using Extinguisher's chassis to make Ghost Raptor, but that didn't work. So, yeah, the only one I have left is the tank chassis. And I went with that because it had 4 wheels. And, yeah. So, Ghost Raptor, it's a good shunter, but again, as you saw there, its bar spinner comes off very easily. Man. Ghost Raptor, though it may have some decent amount of control, it's still not... It still can't really lift as much as ever. Man, I could have just bought another Whiplash, and then just put the horizontal bar at the top, and then call it a day. And then remake it. But anyways, that's enough for Ghost Raptor. Next up is Grey Hole. Again, an inspiration for David Smeg's White Hole. Anyways, the reason it's brown, for some strange reason, is because I used to make a Hexbug Rusty out of it. And when I heard about the new Hexbug Rusty was about to come out with Hypershock, I immediately just demonetized it. And, yeah, it's a pretty destructive full-body spinner, but like I forgot to mention this with the Ghost Raptor, its tracks will usually come off a bit easily and cause it to hinder its drive. I wish I could probably fix this, but I don't know how. Anyways, I love this robot. I wish it could probably do better at some point, rather than just be hindered on its tracks for like 72 minutes. And, well, if it could just get moving at least. Next up. Moo. Next up is Minotaur. A drum spinner that decently works. Anyways, it's got some decent hits with its drum spinner. And much like Beta and some of the other robots, its panels fall off a bit easily. As this robot can drive inverted, and its drum spinner is a bit good, but only at shooting panels like a Ristikill. As, like you see there, it has problems. And it's probably its biggest weakness is either facing Tombstone or being stuck up a wedge. Like for that example, I have to use my hand to get Minotaur away from Nico's wedge. Anyways, Minotaur is decent, but it's not my favorite drum spinner. Yes, my favorite is still T-Rex a lot. As, yeah, Minotaur is a decent robot. Next up is Quicksilver. Probably something I got from Marvel. Anyways, it's supposed to be a front-hinged flipper. It doesn't do much, but it does attack robots with high ground clearance. And yes, it does have the same chassis as Blacksmith. It was originally a flipper that it's supposed to drive backwards, but that'll be a horror for me to drive. So I did a front-hinged flipper similar to like Cassius. And I think there was another front-hinged flipper, P1, from Robot Bricks I saw. That's a front-hinged flipper. But anyways, Quicksilver is decent. Its panels can come off a bit easily. Its wedge is pretty low, but it comes off a bit easily from horizontal spinners. And it can only attack robots with high ground clearance, as you saw flip CSX-36. Anyways, next robot. And next is Ragnarok. Similar with Battle Axe, it's a build your own bot with a standard chassis with an axe. It's supposed to have a cardboard wedge at the front, but that would be lesser durable. So I made it Lego and with Sharpie and a bit of some glue dots. And it's pretty decent. And it may have, if not, have won a championship, if possible. So yeah, it's an axe robot, and I think it does much better for this Hexbug design than its real-life counterpart. And yes, it may have won the Rumble with Monsoon against Mad Catter and Kronos. In real life, it's a bit terrible, but this Lego design is more beefy. And next up is Rotator, a overhead spinner and an undercutter. This robot is decent, but it's very, very loud. And same with Aristokill. It's a pretty decent horizontal spinner, and I did kind of customize it. Its circular spinner it was supposed to be is now a bar spinner. The wheels themselves are black, and it doesn't have a back panel. for, I don't know. And here's its design with the undercutter. And yeah, it's a pretty beefy spinner. It doesn't win most fights, and has a lot of control issues. But hey, at least it does some sort of damage. And yes, it's supposed to have a second bar, but it broke. As I'm trying to make the second. Next up, sorry. Next up is Sawblaze. Probably one of my favorite original robot designs Hexbug has released. Probably everyone's favorite. Anyways, this robot has a hammer saw, and yes, it is the same Hexbug design as from Robot Bricks, because I did have an original Whiplash and Sawblaze, but both of them broke because of wire institutions or something. And the same happened with Warbird's chassis, which was a tombstone, but it broke again. As Sawblaze is a hammer saw, and it's pretty good. It does a bit of some damage, and it's one of the rechargeables, by the way. But also not as all durable as the others. As you saw there, its wedges just went flying. Anyways, Sawblaze has a decent hammer saw. It could scoop up robots pretty easily. And yeah, it's one of my favorite robots, besides T-Rex a lot. Next up is Stinger. Probably the lowest wedge out of any robot. Yes, even lower than Black Hole. I'm sorry. Anyways, Stinger is probably the lowest wedge ever, and it is hinged. And again, an inspiration from Chaotic Robotics, that was an actual real robot. Man, I love that design of the robot. So Stinger, or commonly known as Stinger the Killer Bee, because there already is a Robot Wars version that I'm probably going to make. Stinger is, well, Stinger. It's low to the ground, it's got 6 wheels, only 2 of them move. And I once made Stinger using Minotaur, but that didn't go so well. Yeah, Stinger is just a Hexbug model with a bunch of paper on it. Hopefully it doesn't get flamed up. Next up is my favorite. Yeah, it's T-Rex a lot. If not my most favorite robot out of all the Hexbugs I have. It has an egg beater spinner. It doesn't do quite much damage, but it has a good knockback. As it has a spinning axe at the back, mainly used for a tail. But just like with Ghost Raptor and Grey Hole, T-Rex-a-Lot, both of its side panels, its tracks can come off a bit easily. But just because its tracks come off easily, it's kind of an inspiration of Warhead's Tyrannosaurus design. As yes, it is the king of the dinosaurs. And yes, I might have named this guy off of Sir Swirls-a-Lot from Robot Bricks. But again, I kind of also made a Hexbug model a Lego version for T-Rex-a-Lot, but that didn't come to be. Anyways, next up. Oh yes, Tank Shell. Probably one of my most, if not the most oldest robot I have ever made. And same with pretty much Battle Axe and a couple other robots. But anyways, Tank Shell is a pretty formidable spinner. It has a design similar with Cyclone, but it has side panels that knock off very easily, and has a back wedge for support. And also, much like with some other robots, it has some decent control, but it can only spin around in a bit of a circle. Also, it doesn't necessarily do as much damage. Though having the same design, it doesn't do much damage than Cyclone, who has to be the most powerful horizontal spinner out there. Probably, sorry. As that's Tank Shell. Next up, Kabam. next up is Tombstone. Yeah. So Tombstone, this chassis actually came from the original, Arena Max, which is both pretty cool and also pretty nice. And the reason I got a second Tombstone chassis was so that, or because it came with Brutus and I wanted to make a second, horizontal spinner. But anyways, I kind of like this Tombstone. And, yeah. So, not much to say here, as Tombstone is just Tombstone. And, well, I don't know. It's a very good horizontal spinner, but somehow, wedges from examples like Stinger, Tank Shell, some other wedges have a big effect on Tombstone's drive. Next up is Viper Shot. Viper Shot is supposed to be a lifter with that little yellow thing with the little flame on it. It's supposed to be like a lifter, but it doesn't necessarily work. And it also supposed to have a spinner design, being that little weapon mount thing on it. But due to the time right now, we don't have enough time right now. Because we have like 3 robots left. And 4 or 6 upcoming. As Viper Shot has some decent driving. And yes, this was made with a Bite Force chassis. In fact, this is my second Bite Force chassis. The first one was for Death Roll. And the third one is used for the Bite Force used in this video. If you wanted to see. Anyways, I love this robot. It kind of defeated Duck. And doesn't do anything. And next up are the War Spiders. Basically 2 giant spiders that don't do anything. Yes, they do have little blasters on them, but they barely even do anything. As they just like to walk around, kind of do some teamwork, and like to tag team other opponents. So what is their weapon besides those little guns on them? Well, the legs. Because they can pull apart other limbs, they say. Or like pull apart other robots' panels. I kind of tested that fight with Minotaur and it kind of did well. But mainly their big weakness is that they can't even self-right. And the orange one is number 56, I believe, and and the blue one is number 6. Or at least I think the orange one is 51 actually. Maybe cars? Up next, Whiplash. Another one of my favorites, like Sawblaze. Again, a lot of people went crazy over when Whiplash and Sawblaze came out and how much good reviews it got. But overall, Whiplash and Sawblaze are kind of good. But Whiplash is not necessarily. Yes, it does have 4-wheel drive like the other robots of Viper Shot, Bite Force, Death Roll, and I don't know. But Whiplash, it kind of does a bit good. I mean, it gets underneath robots a bit easily and does a lot of damage. Though it does have a bit of some harsh control, as it's just operating in a bit of some low battery power, but when it gets into high battery power, it just kicks its speed, weapons I meant to say, into full gear. Well, let's just see how it goes when Hexbots comes out. Up next. And finally, we have Witch Doctor. A robot that kind of does some damage, but doesn't really. As in this photo here, or this shot taken, well, there goes his back panel. It's shown having 2 separate wedgelets, which are mainly good for vertical spinners. Yeah, its durability is not that good, but it does unique damage. And here is the photo with I like to call the bear gate on it, because that's what it's supposed to look like. Which is both good for verticals and horizontals. But mainly, Witch Doctor has a bit of some control issues. In fact, this is my 3rd Witch Doctor. The first one I had was turned to Destroya. I got a second one. I tried converting both of them either into P1, but both of them broke. Why? As There are going to be some other robots planned that are not going to be featured, which are Panic Attack and Smee. And the other two, I have parts for them. These pieces for Flippy, the set of wedge lids for the back, the flipper, and these panels here, which are going to be used by using a Hexbug tank chassis, which is going to be my 4th chassis, I think. And this horizontal bar, which is going to be used to make Horizon, I believe either using another tank chassis or by using a tombstone, because it'll be much easier.